Inanimate Insanity is a wonderful show. Created in 2011 by Adam Katz, he and a few of his friends wanted to make a show about characters competing for a prize and someone getting eliminated each episode until only one lone soul remained. They took heavy inspiration from BFDI, another show that was running its first season at the time, by making all their characters be objects with certain stereotypes. And it was a pretty big success for the OSC at the time, gaining a pretty sizable audience after a few episodes with new fans almost every day to this day, and they now sit comfortably at over 700,000 subscribers after writing this video. But why is this? What makes this show so popular, and more importantly, what does it do that separates it from the others? Outside the first season, II bases its episodes very heavily on characters, and the overall story is not afraid whatsoever to go into more serious and heavy topics, which many shows at that time didn't do. Hell, BFDI and other object shows at the time's most serious episodes don't even come close to II's level. A really good majority of the episodes are incredible simply because about how good the dialogue, interactions, and just overall story is. And was not focusing on things like that in the show such as Season 1 and early Season 2, it's still a really fun time, and it's no wonder it quickly got such an audience and evolved to be one of the most beloved shows out there. So with the series recently ending a couple months ago, and yes, I know they confirmed it to continue in 2025. I thought that this video could be used as a little celebration to the series and reflect on all the episodes that come out over the years. So today, we're going to rank all 56 Inanimate Insanity episodes worst to best. And there are a few things I must note before we start. When ranking this list, I think about the era or time when the episodes come out. What that means is that episodes that were released in Season 1 or early Season 2 that rank at the bottom, I won't be as harsh on because the standard was much lower than it is today. However, episodes from late Season 2 and Season 3 I'll be much more harsh on because at that point, the standard is much higher, so episodes I don't enjoy later on I won't be as nicer towards. This also works the other way though too. Episodes that rank higher no matter the standards, I'll still be incredibly nice to and will be praising them non-stop because they're, well, good. If that doesn't make sense to you, then I'm sure you'll figure out what I mean as we go through the video, but if I'm a bit more harsh or critical on certain episodes, that's why. Lastly, this list is purely enjoyment based, which means it's based on how much I enjoy the episode. I know certain episodes objectively deserve to be above and below other ones, but this isn't a fact video. But feel free to discuss with me in the comments if you agree or disagree. I love hearing the things you guys have to say. But without any more waiting, this is every Inanimate Insanity episode ranked.
Greetings and salutations!
Yeah, I know putting this episode in last is a cheap pick, but can you blame me? Listen, I won't trash this too hard considering it's the first episode, and I'm pretty sure the creators were in middle school at the time, but I really don't think I need to explain why this is at the bottom. The animation, the voice acting, the really weird Chris McClane voice, we all have to start from somewhere though. Look at how much the series has evolved. It's really insane that we went from this to late Season 2 quality in less than 10 years. Not much happens though. Mifune introduces himself and all the characters jump off the cliff for the first challenge. It's the shortest episode besides 5.5 and that one's meant to be short, so there isn't much to cover. Moving on.
Learn how to spell.
Okay, at least you can say the first episode is memorable for its really less than optimal quality and it just being the first in the series in general. Now let me ask you this. Do you remember anything of significance from the stacker? Because I sure as hell did not. Let me tell you the whole episode start to finish right now. The elimination happens, Lightbulb gets out unfairly, Nicolay makes his first appearance, and the characters stack golf balls. That's it. No significant development, even the characters barely interact with one another, and the challenge just sucks. It's so boring that the episode was aware of it, and it lasts for 2 minutes, which is less than the majority of the episode. Not much to say though, it's just very boring and forgettable.
Speaking of elimination, and I don't mean my bowel movements.
The second episode is an okay upgrade I guess from the first one, but it's still not very good. The teams are formed this episode, which are Team Epic led by Lightbulb and Team Chicken Leg led by Balloon. I will say this now before I eventually talk about how not good this episode is, but Balloon is actually really funny here oddly enough. I love how whiny and angry all the time he is, and it's really funny to look back at this version of Balloon compared to the one we have now. Anyway, The contest is to collect lemons, which is decent, but some really odd stuff happens. Like, even though it's retconned in a future episode, there's an implied joke of Nickel taking a dump on baseball, and also Balloon wins for his team by forcing Taco to spit lemons, which means that the first boot will come from Team Epic, and after a bowling ball, dolphin, and piano, Paper's the first one out. But yeah, the episode still isn't that good. It's mostly due to the still pretty rough animation and really weird voice acting. Like, listen to Bomb here.
Okay, that was kind of harsh.
Anyway, that's why it places pretty low.
That's for calling Taco.
This episode starts the tradition of recaps, which were honestly really cool to see, and I kinda wish they kept the recaps in future seasons. But the episode is yet again not very good. Some cool things do happen admittedly, like the first appearance of Cheesy, but even he isn't enough to save this one. The challenge is fine I guess as well. You have to slingshot your teammates across a gorge, but it's basically just a few minutes of Balloon yelling at his team and knife abusing his teammates. The animation starts to get passable though, I will give it that. It's not even near to being the series' best, but I think you're making progress when the tongues aren't on the top of your mouth.
What's I?
This might possibly be the shortest segment in the video. If I'm gonna be honest, the idea for the episode is cool, but it's nothing more than just filler. We get our first look at Idiotic Island and the debut of Apple in the series, but I wonder where Apple's recommenders today though. Like, do you think that Total Drama 23 keeps up with the series? And if they do you ever think about how their character they suggested years ago made very huge impacts in the series later on? I don't know, just something fun to think about. But again, nothing much happens here, but I'll give it a pass because that's kind of the point. Overall, just a really inoffensive episode.
Elimination time.
Fun fact, this is the first episode that the elimination time theme was used, but again, it's as much as you would expect out of an early season 1 episode. The contest is to throw rocks at each other, which seems pretty violent all things considered, but oh well, who am I to judge? Baseball tries to clutch up for his team, but he fails and his team loses and kicks him off, but I kinda find this weird because Knife was the one that had the really bad plan at the start that got him and most of Baseball's team out, so it's a bit weird that he didn't get out here instead. And you have to feel bad for Baseball because he spent the most time on Idiotic Island out of everyone in this season. It's alright though, because he placed insanely well in season 2 anyway. Yeah, that's pretty much it though. I do think it's the only early season 1 episode that actually isn't too bad because some stuff happens, but this also doesn't mean that there's really anything to write home about, which is made especially apparent because it doesn't even crack top 50 on the list.
Who's got a rubber ball?
This episode is filled to the brim with content, and I'm honestly all here for it. The debut challenge is cool, even though it's just a few minutes of Teddy destroying everyone, until they get out by Apple, who also debuts this episode. I actually know that the winner for the debut challenge changed multiple times in this episode development, and I always think about a reality where someone like Teddy or really any other character joined the series instead of her. Oh, and the challenge is a huge step up compared to the previous episode in the series. We went from stacking 3 golf balls to a huge challenge with 3 mini ones in it. It's still just okay overall though. While it was the biggest episode in the series yet at that point, there are some flaws to it. Like, anyone that didn't participate in the challenge practically didn't appear whatsoever, and even though the animation is improving, it's still not the best. Though I think the creators should be proud that they went from episode 1 to this kind of animation in 6 months. Hats off to them.
Get the hell out of my boat!
You might be shocked to see a mid to late season 1 episode this low, but I'm sorry, this one kinda sucks. Like, it's weird too because at this point in the season, Adam and the team are really starting to get their footing on making this season because I actually really enjoyed every episode after 6 up to this point, but this one is just such a downgrade. For one, there's a really bad audio delay and quality drop after a few minutes that basically ruined the episode, though it might not be fair to judge considering that there is a fixed version, so I won't let that bring it down too much. But more or less, this episode is just really boring and uninteresting. The challenge is to get a golden coin from a lake, and it's just not really fun to watch. Like, Apple and Marsh are fighting as usual, Taco and Pickle are off just kinda doing nothing together, and OJ and Paper are, well, actually I will say that 2 of them are the exception because I really like them this episode, as is the first time we see them really work together, but
2 out of 3 is telling!
overall, boring and mid. Moving on.
Put that cookie down! No!
This episode, while not the best, is actually quite funny. This is the first time we see MePhone 4S get a major role, and he's hilarious. Just the way he talks, moves, and treats the contestants puts a really nice spin on the episode. That's kind of where the good ends though. Every other part is just meh. The challenge is barely shown. Only a few characters are really playing roles here, and there's really nothing else to write home about besides 4S. I mean, the time travel is cool, but it happens so quickly, which makes me think that this episode would have been a lot better if there were just a few more minutes, or maybe if some scenes were extended to really build on some ideas introduced in this episode.
I hate you. That's why I poisoned your cookie. Prepare to die in 4 seconds.
Hey, that's.
You shall not pass.
While the idea for this one is good, its execution just wasn't the best in my eyes. The eliminated characters all escape idiotic out and try to flee by going back towards where Phone is. I don't know why they didn't just sail the other way, but regardless, I feel the eliminated players were very underutilized here in general. Besides Lightbulb and Salt, none of them really do much besides just running away and getting captured. The other points of this one are just incredibly forgettable too. Like, I had forgotten that Apple was eliminated this episode and what the characters were doing before trying to get the eliminated players, which is just apparently Simon Says with Phone. Again, I think the plot is a really good idea, but it was just executed poorly, and I feel like it could have benefited more if it was just a few minutes longer, which is a similar thing I had to say about Foreseeing the Future. Although the one good thing that this episode has is Lightbulb, who I mentioned a few seconds ago. This is the first time we really see her play a role in the series, and she's great and very funny here in my opinion. In general, I think it was great featuring Lightbulb because she was kind of bland in the season up to this point, and it's a great preview of more of her shenanigans in season 2. Oh my god. Yup, that's right, we're already at a Season 3 episode. Season 3 has its high points, and where there are some, they are very, very high. But Season 3 also has its low points, and where they are there, they are very, very low. In my opinion, every episode of early Season 3 is pretty weak overall, with the exception of the Overthinkers, and this is a prime example, because in my eyes, Episode 2 is the worst one of the season. For starters, I feel like a way more entertaining challenge could be picked besides naming your team. Candle's the only one here that makes this one mildly interesting with her whole meditation circle with the Thinkers. The Sinkers are barely relevant, and the Pinkers? Oh, where do I even begin with their plot this episode? Okay, so basically, Fan steals his own file from Cabby, which makes her angry at him, and they basically are arguing the whole time. I see what they were trying to go with, but I really dislike this. To see Fan, a character who was incredibly key and important last season, be so derailed and dumbed down here, just really rubs me the wrong way. I mean, this is coming from someone who loves Fan, but I can't be the only one who feels this way, right? This especially upsets me because he gets eliminated that episode and does not appear again until the finale of the season. I mean, if he was so irrelevant here, then he might as well just not have been in the season. No offense. I get that they kicked him off for more opportunities for newer characters, but good lord, he was just done so dirty this time around. That's why I mostly don't like this episode. Sure, the challenge is boring and pretty unengaging, but it's just Fan and Cabby in general. The two of them could have had a conflict, that's fine, but the way they are portrayed here just makes me really upset. And at least Cabby gets her own arc and improvement later on. Alright, I'm sorry. I won't ramble anymore about why I don't like this episode. I think I've made my point as to why I think it's the worst this season.
That's a lovely noise, but might I suggest one that's a bit more soothing?
Jeez, want me to bend over backwards too?
Yeah, well, we'll see how you hold up in court.
Yup, that's correct. We have another Season 3 episode. I was debating if this one was worse than Episode 2, but I ultimately decided it barely beats that one out. That's not to say it's good though. Tragedy at 60 feet is ironically tragic. Okay, it's actually not that bad, but I just want to say that sentence really bad. But seriously, this episode is not very good. I remember being incredibly underwhelmed when this first came out. I mean, think about it. We went from the Overthinkers, one of Season 3's best, to this. Though it doesn't do anything inherently wrong, I just find it very unengaging. The challenge is incredibly lackluster as it's just an egg drop that doesn't even happen in the end, and what the teams are doing just doesn't really work for me either. The Sinkers are fighting over Box's vote, the Pinkers are fighting again like episode 2, and the Thinkers are actually decent but barely get any screen time, which although is understandable because the last episode featured only them, still doesn't help the episode. Box gets injured really badly due to the Pinkers' negligence and they get eliminated this episode due to the injuries, and honestly, that's the only thing that's worth remembering about this episode in my eyes. I'm not saying nothing happens at all, it's just too boring for me to even care that much. And speaking of remembering, this episode is so forgettable. I think it's actually one of the least talked episodes in the series, and if not, then definitely this season. It's also the shortest episode in the season, so that doesn't really help it either in terms of memory. And all in all, this episode isn't really bad per se, it's just not very engaging and really unmemorable.
The sum of all parts is greater than the whole.
I think you have that backwards, my dear.
Jumping back to season 1, Sugar Rush is the first episode of season 1 that's actually pretty okay. This time it takes place during Halloween and at night, and I think this is the first time I'm talking about this, but I love themed episodes and object shows. Seriously, theming an episode of a show around a holiday in the OSC has always been a soft spot for me, and even if it's not, changing the setting for it to take place in different weather or at night really goes a long way in my eyes, because I think we've all been used to the same green grass with blue sky setting that most shows do. A lot of the reasons why I personally love Teapot 9 and 13 are for this exact reason, because the setting is just much different. Or if that doesn't tell you something, 4 of my 5 favorite episodes in BFDIA take place in somewhere that isn't Goiki, or if it does, they do something to change it around a bit. I really hope switching the time of day or setting or theming becomes a lot more common in object shows. It's really the best when they do that. Anyway, going back on topic, this episode is pretty decent overall. The characters do normal stuff you would do on Halloween, like collecting candy and getting scared, and overall it's just kind of neat to watch. I also love Apple here. This is the first episode that she really gets time to shine, and she's great. Her thinking a pile of garbage can pass for candy and tries to prove it wrong by eating it is really hilarious. But again, it's a season 1 episode, so in the grand scheme of things, it's not really gonna rank too high. Get ready to stay in season 1 for a while, by the way, because the next 5 entries, including this one, are episodes from said season, and the first of which is Crappy Anniversary. This episode takes place 1 year after the first one ever, and Mifune decides to celebrate by having the old animation style elimination area and the challenge from episode 1. By the way, I love the detail of how Bo and Apple literally just pop out of existence when they go to the old style because they just didn't exist yet. I also love how the characters themselves acknowledge how horrible it used to be. It's a pretty standard season 1 episode overall though. Everyone does the cliff challenge and we all get to see them jump, or at least attempt to jump. The only other thing to note is Marshmallow in this episode. She basically has a crash out on all the characters for having to put up with their stupidity and show for a year, which basically dooms her the next time she loses. I'm gonna be honest though, I kinda side with her here. Sure, she could have used better words to communicate how frustrated she is, but after what has happened up to this point, I can see where she's coming from. I mean, she's been burnt, impaled, and mauled in the span of a year. That's all I can say about the episode. Quite standard, but that's not really a bad thing.
Lollipops.
Chainsaws.
Lollipops.
Chainsaws.
Lollipops.
This episode marks the first in the series to be in HD, and paired with the updated assets, this episode couldn't look better. But with that being said, the animation carries because besides that, this episode is just decent. Basically, in short, there's some drama at the beginning, Bo getting out, and a really short challenge. Basically, you're on a huge platform with tiles, and if you step on a faulty one, you fall and lose. Everything about this episode is just pretty much blink and you'll miss it. You have conflicts lasting like a minute, a really unmemorable challenge, and the only thing that's worthy talking about is 4S coming back. I do love that a lot though. He was just as funny as his previous appearance, but like I said, it's just okay. The animation is what really brings this one up.
Here's your chainsaw.
Phew, that was...
Eliminated contestant. Elimination time. Ta-da.
I think a lot of you might have expected this one to be lower, but no, this is actually one of the better season 1 episodes in my eyes. If I had to describe it perfectly, it would basically be BFDI 24 done right, because this is a pretty good buffer in between the elimination and finale. Most of the runtime is taken by the contestant vote, which is the final quote-unquote challenge, and you might think it's done, but I see it more as a fun sequence of everyone this season interacting again. I think the eliminated plays were used much better here, and it was just neat to see everyone sort of reflect on what's happened this season and what each person thinks of the final 3. There's some pretty funny moments in here too, like everyone forgetting about Apple and Lightbulb voting for OJ because he pities Taco and Paper's mental problems. It ends up being OJ and Paper tied up for elimination votes, and it's down to Pickle to decide who leaves, and he ultimately chooses Paper, and that's the only really significant thing that happens, just Paper and Pickle being eliminated. But what'd you expect out of a buffer episode like this one? I think it did what it needed to in the best way possible, and was 100 times better than just adding filler or past clips like BFDI 24 did.
Prizes are soursop cream and cookie kebabs. Without the cookies, cause...
You're a...
Fat slobs.
You ate them.
Wow, how'd you know?
Lucky guess.
Okay, if you get more votes than me, I'm putting you in an electric chair.
Will I have cup holders?
Okay, this is the point of the list where from now on, every episode I consider to be good, and not just alright or decent, and the first of which is Double Digit Desert. Not much happens character-wise besides Bomb and OJ fighting, but I just find this one very entertaining every time I come back to it. is mostly because it's just packed with content and stuff. There's a rejoin, a debut, and a challenge all in one. The rejoin is pretty fun to watch and each character gets their own little moment. Paper ends up rejoining, which was definitely deserved, but we also see Evil Paper for the first time. I think Evil Paper is just what Paper himself needed because we didn't really know much about him prior to rejoining, so this gives him a lot of much needed depth since he's going to be here for a while. Oh yeah, and Bo also joins too for whatever reason, but I think the decision to keep her was amazing. Like, Bo is the best character in season 1 and it's not even close. It's all because of her funny moments. I really mean it when I say the jokes land every time, and almost every time she appears on screen this season, something funny comes out of it. The challenge is good enough too. You just have to cross a desert. Nothing more to add about that one though. Still, a really great episode for the time and by season 1 standards, even though Bo mainly carries its placement.
We're going to the Cactus Desert.
A dessert? Sure. I'll take a chocolate cake with whipped cream.
And nobody saw this coming. Nobody. Wow.
Journey Through Memory Lane Part 1 is a good enough way to start off a finale. It's quite the short episode though, as the recap takes 2 minutes, so we're only really left with 5 minutes of actual episode, but it's not that big of a deal. The B-plot they set up is good too. Forrest returns one final time, but to not hurt Miphone, but to protect him from an even newer Miphone, Miphone 5, who's out to kill him just like Forrest was. The finalists are decent here too. They have to compete in one final challenge that's every single one this season combined, but Taco's doing really good at them for some reason, which is great foreshadowing to the next episode. The eliminated players being back is nice as well, but I think I like them more in the last episode than this one. That's really about it though. It gets the job done and is pretty good at setting up for the second part of the finale, which is much higher on this list. Still a good episode though.
Wow, almost everyone here has got my back. Maybe even Balloon.
No, not really.
Screw you.
1, 2, 3, go!
Isn't it weird that we went from part of a finale to episode 1 of a new season? Anyway, Stranded in Paradise, while towards the lower half of my season 3 rankings, isn't really a bad episode like Shame of the Name. It's pretty chill for a first episode though, because it's not really grand or huge, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though I like season 2's episode 1 the best. We're reintroduced to some old characters, and the ones that they picked for this season I overall agree with. Though I would have loved to see a few more season 1 players that weren't in season 2 play again, like Paper, Pickle, or even Bomb to an extent. I feel like one of these three could have replaced Fan because he is literally irrelevant this season, but I'm not going to rant about that again. I know that the cast was picked based on voting results as well, so there's nothing that really could have changed who was picked. The new characters are great too. Some of my favorite newbies this season are Silver, Goo, and Lifering, but everyone new here has something to like about them. The new intro is amazing too. After the short montage of characters for like 10 seconds that we've seen for years, it's nice that we actually get to see a full-blown intro for once. It has great animation and banging music. Best intro in the series, no doubt. Besides that though, the first episode is pretty run-of-the-mill. We get banter between the old and new characters, the classic cliff jump challenge, and the elimination where Blueberry gets out due to doing nothing to help. Pretty open and shut case. Not a spectacle of an episode or anything, but it's there to do its purpose and it serves it pretty well. If you want a better premiere episode though, I'd go to Breaking the Ice from season 2.
Watch where you step, mate.
Oh, sorry.
Doesn't feel great to be stepped all over, yeah?
Oh, but this can have a face? What kind of sense does...
You want a key? How about 88 of them?
Inanimate SmackDown is seriously underrated, or at least by season 1 standards. I did not remember this episode being so good. It's mostly because of Evil Paper though. OJ finds out he gets triggered when he hears the words Idiotic Island, but here's the thing. Paper has trauma from being in the cage, right? But look at this. He could have just easily slipped through in between the bars to escape. Not only that, but Knife, Nico, Paintbrush, and maybe even Marshmallow could have done the same. Sure, they wouldn't have been off the island, but at least they won't be confined into a small area. Going back to Evil Paper though, there's this really cool scene that takes place in Paper's head with him and the evil version fighting for control over his body because Evil Paper wanted full control of him. The way he defeats him is cool too, crushing him with a piano just like how he was crushed by one way back then. Overall a really great scene, and him and OJ working together this episode was amazing. There are other good things to like about this one too. The challenge is a tournament style fight to defeat or kill, and it has some really funny moments in it, and the jokes are what bring this episode up for me as well because they are all on point this time around. All in all though, I love Inanimate SmackDown and it's a classic gem from season 1.
Why won't you fall?
I'll never fall.
It's a chair. You can, like, sit on it.
Again, another classic from season 1. I love the Snowdown for a few reasons. For one, it's another themed episode. This time it's Christmas and wintertime. The backgrounds are all snowy, the challenge is to make a Christmas tree, and there's loads of cheery songs in the background. As I explained earlier, I love themed episodes so much in object shows. And you know this episode's doing it right when someone that doesn't even celebrate Christmas like me loves it. Sure, the animation isn't very good, and there's the questionable singing at the end, but it's more or less just really charming and fun. I feel really bad for Apple this episode though. Like, I don't think hurting Marshmallow and stuff isn't cool, but I get why she hated her for years because of the Santa incident that happened in this episode, and I really felt bad for her here. This is also the first time in the series that a love interest between two characters is shown. Salt starts to develop a crush on OJ, but it's quite one-sided because he doesn't seem to feel the same way at all whatsoever. This is really interesting though, and I really wish the show touched on this one-sided crush a bit more because I think it's a pretty interesting way these two interact. Also, Mifune hosts a rejoin despite him saying in the first episode that he can't come back. Ever. It's quite alright though because the auditions are nice and fun to watch. Wait, who's that? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Bo makes her debut in this episode with a nice in-universe ad about chairs. Apparently you can sit on them and they'll make you really cool too. Quite the convincing ad if I say so myself. I already said this, but I love Bo so much and she's the best character in the season despite debuting halfway through. So combined with the theme episode, the interesting Salt and OJ interactions, and Bo, this makes it one of the best season 1 episodes in the series.
You're a liar!
I love that oatmeal-y raisiny taste.
In case you didn't know, this is the first season 2 episode we're covering on this list, and yeah, Marsh on Mars is pretty mid compared to the other season 2 episodes. It's just such a downgrade compared to episode 1 as well, because I think that one is actually a really great episode, only to be followed up by this. Let's start with the good. I actually really enjoyed the elimination because it was really funny, and in general, the humor is on point this episode. I'm going to say this a lot about early season 2 episodes, by the way, because they are, in my opinion, the best episodes in the series in terms of jokes. I also had completely forgotten that Meepad was introduced in this episode as well. Like, what a random episode for such an important character to debut, am I right? It's not a bad thing though, I like Meepad. After the elimination though, it doesn't really do it for me. I think the challenge is a great idea, which was to save Marshmallow from Mars, but the teams literally spend just over a minute in space. I had also completely forgotten that Fan's egg was introduced in this episode as well. Can you actually believe that the plot for hatching the plan can be tied back to this random episode because Apple took the egg in this episode? It's just really weird to think that she caused one of the biggest plot points this season. Oh, and I'd almost completely forgot, but this was also when the whole knife and trophy thing gets set up, which is cool initially, but it doesn't really last long because...
What?
Seriously, why did I completely forget that this one introduces so many new things? Overall though, this episode's fine. I just found myself to be pretty underwhelmed when rewatching this episode for this video, especially after an amazing episode previously. Lastly, I know this doesn't matter like at all, but why are the second episodes of each season in this series always missed? Like, a Lemony Lesson isn't the worst of season 1, but it's still an early season 1 episode, and I really have issues from Shame of the Name from season 3, and the one we're on right now is fine, but it's the worst of season 2 as well. Still, just fine by season 2 standards, but it's still good on this list because it places decently overall.
Hey, so, wanna hear a joke? Sure, as long as it isn't a dirty one.
Yeah, guys, it's going to be amazing.
Another season 2 episode, and yeah, I don't really care for this one either. The one thing that it has going for it is that Do is introduced here. Do is supposed to be Bo's quote-unquote replacement and brother, but he's basically nothing like her and is super neutral and apathetic. I kinda like it though. He makes for some really great moments on screen, and I really wish he had lasted a few more episodes instead of being killed like 10 minutes after his first appearance. Genuinely a really interesting character. I also like Marshmallow this episode, specifically the beginning scene because she is the only one left amongst the cast to even care about or remember Bo, with maybe the exception of Fan as well. I thought this was really nice to see that there is at least one Bo lover still out there. Besides that though, the episode's just okay. I wasn't really invested in the challenge all too much despite there being some pretty good dialogue, and I could never really get into the nickel and knife plotline. The whole teaching knife sarcasm thing just didn't really do it for me, and I feel a more interesting set of interactions could have been done between the two. But as I said with the last plot with all season 2 episodes, the jokes are on point as always with basically no misses, and Do really helps that too with his lines. Besides that, not much else to say about this episode. It's fine in the season and good in the big picture, but there are many more season 2 episodes that clear this one.
Yo, vitamin C, send me.
Here, Marshmallow, take it.
Tea Kettle, please never directly face anyone again.
Jumping to season 3's Snapshot Showdown, this is the first episode that I actually don't really have any issues with in season 3. It's just modern II fun. I think the challenge is a great idea and it's done pretty well too. You have to get bad photos of characters from different teams, which overall made for some great scenes in between teams, such as the Thinkers and Pinkers going to war before eventually organizing a truce for the night. Oh, and speaking of night, I think the challenge taking place over 24 hours is a really neat twist as well. Plus we get to see the background and setting change, and you know how much I'm a sucker for that. I also love Nickel's little plotline too, with him trying to defeat Clover and her luck by getting a bad picture of her. But maybe I also have a huge bias towards that because I personally love Nickel and Clover's dynamic in this season. In the elimination though, Lifering ends up leaving, which definitely hurts to see because I have a soft spot for him. I mean, think about it, since the first episode, he's tried his best to be a good teammate and always look out for other people, even Blueberry. Looking at it in the long run though, yeah, he was definitely the best option, but at least he gets plenty of screen time later on. So if I'm praising this episode, then why is it placed here at this spot? Well, the episode doesn't really do anything wrong, it's just that basically every other season 3 episode has something that makes it better. Snapshot Showdown isn't really a story or development heavy episode, and it's pretty unserious in general, which is perfectly fine, but since most episodes have that, it kinda just gets shoved down more and more on the list. A pretty good episode though if you want a nice break from all the drama in the show.
Silver Spoon, where have you gone? You should have returned from your daily 2-hour I cannot deal with you all anymore time by now.
Try Your Best is an animation epic staple. It was the most viewed video on their channel for years and has over 14 million views. Sure, it's one of the most goofy and unserious episodes in the whole series, more unserious than Snapshot Showdown, which is previous on this list, and isn't even close to being an amazing entry, but I can't help but feel kind of nostalgic for this episode whenever I rewatch it. This is because I used to love this episode for some reason whenever I first joined the OSC. I can't really tell you why, but maybe it was just because I was a stupid 11-year-old who was on the internet all day due to the pandemic. I don't know. But while I don't love this episode as much as I used to, it's still really good. I like the B-plot for Yin Yang splitting into two and Yang just kind of wreaking havoc wherever he goes and nobody really stopping him. Just like Do, I kind of wish this lasted for a few more episodes though. Like maybe they could have been 2 separate contestants or something and get their own number of votes. How cool would have that been? The challenge is fun enough to watch as it's a triathlon. The characters that are picked to race have their own little moments, but there isn't much more to say about that. Oh yeah, and Lifering debuts here and acts as a lifeguard who saves Box from drowning due to Toilet's negligence. Besides that though, there's not many more things to talk about. Like we could all see Cherries getting out from a mile away, and Yang Yang just goes back to normal by the end of the episode. Story-wise, not the best. Character-wise, also not the best, but I still enjoy it for what it is. Plus the nostalgia gives this one a few extra points along the way.
Whoa, Yang! Take it easy! I think someone needs to go sit in the calm down corner.
Shut up!
No, Yang will never calm down. I never.
Yin's a scrawny little pudding boy, isn't he?
Anyone else actually thrown off by the fact that this episode's actually called Try Not to Laugh Challenge? Like it sounds like an early 2010s video that you might find on YouTube or something. Anyway, while not the best, I think this episode is really underrated. Seriously, I find nobody in the community ever talking about this one, and I think it deserves more love in general. The challenge is okay, but it's really the interactions that do it for me. I love the Sinkers dynamic and how Balloon had to choose between Kettle or Nickel at the elimination. Yin Yang and Candle's mindful positioning is great, along with Bot and Goo trying to cheer up Clover after thinking her luck is a curse, and especially Penny and Silver, which is a personal favorite rivalry or duo of mine. They're absolutely hilarious together, and I love Paintbrush's reaction to everyone loving Silver at the end. Besides that though, there's not really much to say. This might be the shortest season 3 segment in the video, but I've already made my points clear, which were that the dialogue and interactions were amazing this episode, and I find it to be underrated and not appreciated by fans.
Of course, would I ever let a teammate down? Don't answer that.
I'm thinking... Tootsie Wootsie.
I take it back, this is the shortest segment. This is basically if Pokemon was an II challenge, and I like it. All of the Inanimates have pretty cool designs, and it was really cool to watch them all fight. But the main reason why this is up so high is because of Candle this episode. I absolutely love the plot of her kind of not feeling appreciated or needed anymore, and how they built up her betraying the new Thinkers in the elimination later that episode, along with Silver. By far the best 2 characters in this episode. There's not really much else to talk about here though. The Floor's fighter pet thing was really funny, and watching all the characters interact with their new friends was nice, but there isn't many significant things from this episode's story and development wise besides the betrayal and the elimination, or at least in my opinion. It does what it needs to, and it's a good one overall.
I did it! I won Inanimate Insanity!
And out of nowhere, we have our final season 1 episode. Yeah, objectively the quality and presentation of this episode in general is not nearly as good as some episodes we've covered, but I don't really care. I have such a huge bias towards this episode. Doesn't come nearly as close as the other two, but it's still really good. So many things happen. OJ winning was great, though I wonder how it would have gone if Taco had won. Do you think she would have exposed her whole thing in front of everyone or just kept acting stupid? And if we are on the subject of Taco, the whole reveal at the end with her being evil was great, and it was actually built up really well throughout the later half of season 1, with subtle things from episodes 11 and 12 especially that maybe hint at Taco not being who she seems. Mifune and 4S's plot was amazing too. It's kind of a back and forth between the two of them and Mifune 5 trying to steal the money and kill the Mifunes, until it results in Mifune 5 and 4 along with Bo being killed. Top it all off with 4S's ultimate sacrifice to bring back the host along with some funny dialogue and a really cute credit scene. You have a great final episode, or at least by season 1 standards. Oh yeah, and I think it's hilarious that they still kept Apple stranded on the first idiotic island. Anyway, it's really hard to believe that we went from the quality of the first episode in the series to this in about a year and a half. It's really impressive if you ask me. Overall, season 1 of this show will always be, well, season 1, but I do think it can have its moments and, dare I say, good episodes as well. But in all seriousness, I feel the community as a whole should appreciate this show's roots just a little more.
Say the line, Bart!
I will not be threatened by Mexican food.
Yes, Silver. Final 3 doesn't typically include 5 people.
Friend or Froze is possibly one of the most drama and conflict-filled episodes in this entire show's history. Not a bad thing though, but something is happening with everyone. Nico and Balloon going through their divorce arc, Yin Yang and Cabby doing their own thing with the immunity milk, and Silver and Candle bringing up Nico's past with baseball, which, might I add, is a low move by them. And the elimination was incredibly shocking too. And yeah, I like this episode a lot. I think there are way more season 3 episodes worth your time, but this is just a pretty good entry all things considered. The only thing I really have to complain about is just the challenge. It's the cliff jump yet again, but when you land in a pipe, you have to duke it out on the glacier from season 2. Still doesn't really do it for me though. This is the 4th time we've seen the cliff jump in the series, and I found myself a bit over it at this point. It doesn't bring the episode down too much though, because it's not really challenge focused. Oh yeah, and we get to see Bot's new design, and I like it. Obviously I had to get used to it because we had seen the pink bow for years, but I think this new version really suits them. Not much else to say here though. I sound a bit harsh on this one, but I do enjoy Friend or Froze. There just isn't much to talk about besides drama within the episode.
Cabby, come on! Raise up your hand and give me your milk blessing!
Oh, I will. Just don't want to do it in front of everyone. Keep on guessing.
I suddenly require a non-fat oat milk latte with 6 pumps of artificially flavored syrup.
We're now getting to the point where we're reaching episodes of season 3 that I quite enjoy, and the first of which is titled TBD. Firstly, I used to watch Saberspark a lot a few years ago, so to see him appear in one of my favorite shows is not only cool, but super surreal, but in a good way. In general, I like the guest appearances in these object shows. Lately, BFDI has done a lot of guest appearances in their episodes in the past year and a half or so, and I really enjoyed them. The same for II as well. The challenge is awesome and really entertaining too. You have to make a cartoon and one person from each team has to fulfill a role like the producer, the artist, or the director. In the end, there are some pretty funny results from both teams' cartoons, though don't you find the setting in the real world of a cartoon super out of place for such a cartoony setting? Not really a bad thing though. There's plenty of amazing moments, interactions, and dialogue as the challenge sequence is happening as well, especially with Silver and Painty bickering before eventually coming together to make the greatest piece of art that's ever written. Candle using her inner flame powers to simply make money, which seems pretty out of line for what the purpose of the inner flame is, but hey, I'm not here to judge. Sadly though, one of my favorites, Goo, gets out here, and I can't really defend him either. His $10 million blunder really put a target on him amongst his teammates, but at least he seemed to take his loss pretty well. Anyway, super great episode all in all.
This production's gonna get the axe! I have to do something!
Do something? That is not the director's responsibility.
Whoa, a new voice? Lucky!
It's purely a coincidence that this episode is right next to the previous on the list, but it is cool to talk about the following episode instead of having to jump around in the series. The main thing with this one is the Rejoy challenge. I was really rooting for one of the sinkers to win this one, but honestly the more I think about it, Cabby winning was definitely the best choice story-wise in the long run. Plus all the Indefinite Island members coming together to cheer Cabby on at the end was really wholesome. Before the episode ends, Mifune reveals that there's still going to be an elimination despite there not even being a challenge, and in the end, Cabby manages to get revenge on Test Tube from a few episodes back and gets her eliminated. She does make a fair point to Cabby though before leaving. She's only really scared of other people instead of helping them, which, in a way, kinda kicks off her development for the rest of the season. The final thing I should really address is the new VAs this episode. I'm not going to talk about why there are new voice actors here because I really don't like talking about controversy on this channel, but in short, Bot and Paintbrush get new voices in this episode. With Bot, I think their new voice fits in pretty well with not just their character, but it was well timed with their arc of trying to find their true self. Paintbrush on the other hand is good too. I will admit, I think I'll always miss how the old voice sounded, but after a few rewatches, I warmed up to it pretty quickly and love it as well. Anyway, that's really about it. I like the rejoin, Cabby returning, and the voices of new characters.
Ugh, the mashugana we have to deal with while the current players get to just sit around.
I'll have you know I left them with some incredibly intense work to do.
Go! To the oatmeal raisin cookie, aka the #1 contributor towards global warming.
This is a very specific fact, but this is the least viewed episode in the entire Inanimate Insanity series for whatever reason, and it's the only episode to have less than 1 million views as of this video. But enough with that. This is a good episode which resolves some of the things happening. For one, Nickel actually said sorry to Balloon for how he mistreated him in season 2, which was really odd to see because Nickel never really owns up for his actions or anything like that, but it's wholesome to see them be friends again and not divorced anymore. Also, watching Blueberry controlling the game, treating the others like crap, and just always outsmarting the contestants was really funny to me and many others as well. He's not my favorite character, but definitely the highlight of the episode due to that wit he has during the episode. Oh yeah, and remember that weird creature from season 1 named Tyler Bungard? Well, we get a somewhat reintroduction of them this episode. It's the same species, but its name is Tyler Bombard. Quite a random element to bring back, but I thought they were a decent addition. Although I can't help but hear Book and Fiery whenever Tyler talks, most likely due to the fact that they're voiced by Michael Huang. Anyways, I think we all know that Blueberry was going to leave this episode, and I wasn't even shocked by the elimination, but it was good to see him back for an episode and just cause chaos. Overall, a pretty good season 3 entry.
How did he get so strong?
We're gifted. Just when words are formatted for looking at and
Well, we're already at another finale. Well, part of one at least. I think this is an okay start to the Invitational finale. There's not really too much to say here though. We get to see all the eliminated players again, which is really awesome, and the finalists have some good dialogue amongst them. The main thing though is the Invitational committee, which has all the people throughout the season that have been worse off or been affected negatively due to MePhone, like Tyler, Springy, and Walkie. And do I like them? They're fine, I suppose. The episode doesn't really make them as threatening as I think I wanted them to be, and in general, I just wasn't very compelled and invested to their whole thing of trying to get revenge on MePhone. I can't really tell you why, but it's just not really for me. There are a few positives though. Silver was peak this episode with just his lines and his old inner frame thing with Candle at the end, and you won't believe this, but Van is actually good this episode. No, but in all seriousness, after years of not appearing whatsoever, it's good to see him again, and his bits of screen time this episode are really wholesome and sweet with him introducing himself to Bot. I can't really help but just smile at the scene. Overall though, the episode is good despite the Invitational committee bringing it down quite a bit. The second part to this finale is much better though.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I would like to inform you that if you don't vote for Silver Spoon, you're all stupid loser babies with no respect for utter alphas.
Hello, is there a Mr. Phone here?
As much as season 3's first episode quality is much better than this one, I just can't help myself but love this premiere. Breaking the Ice is packed with content. Like, I don't really think there's a point in this episode where you'll be bored at all because it either just keeps going or is introducing new things. The new characters are great and they blend in really well with the show and the old characters without needing a huge introduction or anything like that. MePhone's first new assistant, Toilet, also debuts here and he is so good. I love the way he talks and the way he moves and flies around. It just gets me every single time. The old characters that were chosen to join were ones I absolutely have no problem with too. People like Baseball, Nickel, Knife, and especially Lightbulb really get a chance to shine this season after really rough performances last season in terms of placement. The prize OJ got with his money is cool too, though I'm not really sure how $1 million can buy you a hotel, and not only that, maintain it and keep it running for years on end. The economy in the II world seems much better than real life, honestly. The challenges are pretty decent too, though I think season 2 has some better challenges from other episodes. So many things get set up here, like the alliance with Baseball, Nickel, and Suitcase, and Trophy and Knife's very short rivalry. Stuff like this would prove to be very substantial to the season later on though, and the things that are set up are quite promising. Lastly, I'm not going to get into it, but if you want to laugh, please just watch this episode. It's one of the funniest in the entire series. Anyway, this is a really awesome premiere and it just makes you wanting more. Too bad episode 2 isn't the best, but oh well. It's a fun and amazing premiere, which is why it's up this high.
Wow, you're really good at this non-interacting thing. How do you pull it off? A true master indeed.
No, I'm pretty sure he's dead.
If murder mystery was an II challenge, this episode really isn't your typical one. Sure, there's an elimination, but everything else is pretty much different from a typical season 3 entry. Supposedly the final rejoin was supposed to take place, but before anything can happen, Blueberry dies. And death happens all the time in the show, but this is different as he was assumed to be murdered, so the characters have to pair up with an islander and figure out who did it. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite challenges in the entire series. There's not been a single challenge like this one I've seen from many other shows, or at least the ones I've watched, but it's super unique and different to the series, but it oddly fits in. Everyone gets paired up at quote-unquote random, even though we all know the pairings are just the most fitting options, and everyone has their own little scene on trying to figure out who did it. Weirdly enough though, I like Cabby and Lifering most this episode, even though I thought I'd like another duo more. I really enjoyed their dialogue. Cabby doesn't want to use her files because she's too scared about making others uncomfortable like she used to do, but Lifering makes a really good point on how her life doesn't have to be one huge test, and you can still refer to notes from time to time. I also just love their silly little dynamic when they were trying to accuse Goo of the killing. The only other pairing I have to note about is Nico and Clover. I love the scenes of Nico opening up to her despite their rough history and him realizing that the events of season 2 between him, Suitcase, and Balloon are mostly his fault. It's great that Nico's really reflecting on who he used to be, because I don't think he's really realized up to this point the amount of damage he's done with his friends and alliance. Really, this is an incredible amount of growth that Nico needed for years, and I was just really happy to see this. Oh yeah, and it turns out Blueberry didn't die and he just faked it, so that's cool. I kinda expected him to rejoin anyway, so I wasn't too thrown off by the twist, but overall I love this episode. But I think the things that make it stand out amongst the rest is just how good the dialogue is, and the unique challenge along with the different nighttime setting definitely bring it up a few spots as well.
What did you expect? Someone to just carelessly leave behind a knife?
I mean, I've done it.
I mean, it wouldn't be that bright to get real uptight. We're in a creepy, crazy mansion and fans got a lot of fright. Word.
Here's another early season 2 episode that I really enjoy for a few reasons. For one, I know it's not really explicitly Halloween themed, but this episode has a theme of being scary, and you can't tell me otherwise, so this automatically just makes it amazing between the mansion challenge and the night setting. Just in general, lots of stuff happens here. We get to see some new Mii phones even though they lasted like 2 minutes, but they make for some funny moments. Oh yeah, and Fan and Test Tube sort of formed a friendship in this episode. Kinda weird to think that one of the most beloved duos started out here, but I'm not one to complain, because it was really nice to see them connect and relate with each other at the beginning. Wait, is that Bo? Yeah, so Bo of all characters actually decides to make a return this episode, and we get to see her new ghostly form. She actually decides to help Marshmallow scare all the characters out of the mansion, which is really nice of her despite Marsh basically being the reason the way she is. I also really like how this episode is paced too. I know that's super random, but each character goes off with another one and everyone gets their own little scenes. Lightbulb is fooling around with Painty, who is angry with her as always. Nickel is trying to scare Baseball, who is more annoyed with his attempts than anything. And Apple is, well...
Yes, I'm so glad Marshmallow is gone. Now I can enjoy myself.
Apple?
After all, I am just using her vote to get farther in the game.
You big jerk!
Even though we all had the explanation for that later on, this basically just doomed her to elimination. But all the scenes in the mansion paced the episode really well, and I never really found myself bored. The last thing I'll say is the jokes in this one. And you've heard the same song and dance on how I think Season 2's early episodes are the best ones in terms of jokes, but they're on point in this episode as always. Overall, a really good Season 2 entry with lots of stuff jammed into it for everyone. And it's sort of the last fun episode before the mood starts to shift in the season, so enjoy it while you can.
Can't say I'm surprised. You guys are pretty annoying.
Shut up!
Security!
Don't worry, sir. I got your back. I would never let anyone hurt you!
Bring On the Breakfast is awesome, and I am seriously jealous of anyone who got to see it early at the meetups a couple years back. They always seem to premiere the best episodes at meetups like IA15 and BFDIA 14. Back to the topic at hand though, this episode is awesome. I'm not the fondest of Springy, but I don't mind them here. The challenge is super cool, but the best part by far is Bot and Cabby. This segment is basically going to turn into a short minute of praising these two, but can you blame me? Bot and Cabby are incredible here, and I would argue that this is Bot's best episode in the entire series. Them and Cabby aren't on the greatest terms, but they slowly start to grow in each other between Bot opening up to her, Cabby confronting the fake test tube, and Cabby saving Bot from Springy at the end. It's hard to even explain in words why these two are so amazing in this episode, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm trying to say. It's a shame that they get out later in this episode though due to Balloon and Nichols' drama. They're just simply caught in the crossfire of it. Even Mephone was sad to see his favorite go. But on the topic of Mephone, can we talk about how many hints there were to the iOS 16 twist in this episode? Like, of course Bot is Mephone's favorite because they're the only one that Mephone didn't make. And also, that whole thing with Cabby and her parents makes a whole lot more sense now. Between the cool commercial, Cabby, Bot, and Springy, I see why this is a lot of people's favorite season 3 episode. And while it's not my favorite this season, it's really high up. We're inching closer and closer to the end, and it shows, because this episode sort of marks we're not on just good episodes, but amazing episodes.
It's you.
I would certainly hope someone is considering such an obscene option.
You know, when I first watched this episode, I didn't really get the hype, and I've never really gotten the love for Home is Where the Heart Is up until recently, because when rewatching this episode, I get it now. This is an amazing entry in not just this season, but the entire show. This one is very character driven, and I think it does the driving in question wonderfully. The plot is basically trying to force the floor to leave the island because he was eliminated in the last episode, but he can't be punched away for, pretty obvious reasons. I've always wondered what would have happened if he got out, and it was really sick to see the actual outcome. But that's not really why I love this episode. It's because of Paintbrush and Bot. When Season 3 came out, I was rooting for a few people, but I especially wanted Painting to make it to the finals after 2 seasons of defeat. They were great for a very long time, but in their own words, they felt like they were just floating down the game after the team swap, eventually coming to realize that their heart just isn't in the game anymore. It was incredibly sad to see them go, but in a way, it was relieving to know that Painty is going home to the people that they love and be as happy as can be. Bot is great here too. As I said, I really loved how they connected with the floor at the end of the episode. Oh yeah, and Flory is Mephone's new assistant, so get used to that. Off topic, but I've been so used to seeing Flory co-hosting at this point, it's kind of weird to go back to older episodes and see him compete with all the other characters. But regardless, I like the floor, so this was a welcome addition to me. Anyway, it's a bit hard to really describe why I love this episode, but if you just watch it again, you'll definitely see what I mean.
Yes, and may we never see the floor again! Hooray!
Little Road?
We should have never taught him baskets.
I want the pizza now.
I find it absolutely hilarious that we went from such a serious and character-driven episode to... But no, this episode's another II classic in my eyes. The challenge is a great idea, but the bright lights are by far the best part. The conflict between Lightbulb and Painty is super good, and I love Lightbulb proving to Painty at the end of the episode that she can be helpful with her ideas. In this case, it was making a cookie pizza for their team, which is a big hit amongst the judges. Oh yeah, and speaking of judges, there's some really cool guests here for this episode. Window from Object Universe, Gamey from Object Overload, and the Puffball Speaker Box from BFDIA make cameos in the episode to judge the pizza. Now, I wasn't in the OSC at the time when this episode came out, but it was probably really insane to see something like this, especially in 2013 when the OSC was still relatively new. They all have their moments, especially at the end when Cheesy pours water on all of them, and Window is happy because he isn't electric, to which a literal hammer flies at his face and hurts him too. The only other thing to really touch on is Trophy. I know there are probably some Trophy lovers watching this right now, and I've gotta say, yeah, I don't really care for him or this elimination. I'm sorry, but when you're setting up something like Trophy and Knife, only for it to last like an episode and a half, it just doesn't work. I even remember seeing that Adam and the team had planned for this conflict to last much longer, but because the viewers voted him out so early, they had to cut it short and rush the ending at the start of the episode. If you want a character like Trophy to last a long time, then do not let the viewers vote on your show, because we all know that the mean ones get out first. Even Lightbulb said it herself. And this is why I still think that to this day, contestant vote is the way to go for all object shows. But I'm not going to get into why I think that is, because I'm starting to go off topic here. But if you'd like to see a video on that, then let me know. Anyway, Trophy never really got to wow me this season, so I didn't really care about him or the elimination as a whole. This doesn't really bring the episode down at all though, I just knew that many were upset by this. But overall, it's a staple in the series with great jokes, and overall just a really fun time.
No, you!
No, you!
Mr. Cobbs, I did it!
While the episodes in between Mind Your Own Business are definitely way better to me, this is a still great episode that's very lore-filled, oddly enough. The theme for this episode is basically Miphone finding all of his memories of Cobbs again after he tried to block them out for years, and we get to see snippets of Miphone's time at Meeple with Cobbs and how horrible he was to him. Each memory is really cool too, like when he was watching reality shows on TV that gave him the inspiration for II, his escape with Meep at the end of the episode, Mr. Cobbs, I did it, and of course, the Please Cobbs Don't memory. It really gave Miphone a lot more depth that I didn't even know I really needed, but I will never forgive Miphone for firing Toilet at the end of the episode. How could you tell off this silly little guy? Everyone gets an amazing amount of time to shine too. I love Mike and Taco trying to get Knife to ally with them, much to his disinterest though. Test Tube and Baseball along with Suitcase and Fan were duos I didn't even know I needed but love regardless, especially with the whole video thing that Suitcase and Fan were trying to do, which felt really wholesome but also oddly realistic to how one might film in real life. The only character that really takes a backseat in this episode is Lightbulb, but that's pretty understandable because she had a huge episode before this one, so it makes sense, but even so, she provides her some funny moments throughout this one. It's more laid back and chilled out instead of loud and grand, but I think that really works and was definitely needed after time traveling last episode. Overall though, you get a really new perspective on Miphone that you haven't really seen before because of all the memories you get to see, and even though I like a lot of other season 2 episodes more, I should still emphasize on how good this one really is due to its lore and story.
If we follow...
Oh, so it's we now! Rubies are also beautiful. Oh, I can't even tell you about those.
My file says throw dirt.
This is an incredibly well done penultimate episode, and I feel this one should be talked about more. Seriously, the only thing people remember about The Show Must Go On is the famous dart scene, and while that was incredibly hilarious, there are other things to love too. For one, the plot this episode is one of the best this season, with the characters trying to make ideas for episodes. It makes for some really fun scenes too, because whenever someone suggests an idea, they actually play out a scenario where it would happen. Some highlights include the silver and candle one, the elimination where the Christmas gets cancelled, Cabby trying to draw a wheelbarrow, and the Coiny cameo. Plus, the idea of making episodes within the episode is just very meta to the show, but in a really awesome and cool way. There isn't a payoff to the whole thing though in the end, because Aya gets taken out of nomination for a Grosker, and nobody wins immunity. It doesn't really make it worse for me in the end though. Nico gets out, but it's actually really in a wholesome way. Like, can you believe that the same Nico from scenes like this?
No proof? Did you just see what he did? Everyone would just be better off if he kept to himself!
Is the same one who's sharing a hug with Balloon all these years later? Talk about growth. You could say that this episode isn't very good because nothing really comes out of the challenge besides some funny moments, but I'll cut this one a break. To be fair, what are they really supposed to do as a final episode before the finale? All the conflicts between others are resolved, so the episode can't really be based on drama or anything. Anyway, one of my favorites in the season for a good reason, and it's a wonderful time and fun when watching.
Why can't I depict anything properly?
I'm not trying to be facetious here, but I need to know what that drawing was.
A wheelbarrow?
Apologize now.
It's not filler.
Even though this episode is really short, despite what you just heard, this episode is anything but filler, and I really mean that. The mood was already shifting before this one, but the shift hits you like a truck here because the level of seriousness is turned up like 10 notches. There's really two main attractions here in my opinion. The first of which is Balloon. We finally get to see all of his efforts trying to change through a flashback of him trying to get into Hotel OJ. I actually really love this scene because OJ actually believes that he's changing and that the whole thing was just a charade from the last season, but everyone else really thinks that's who he is. He tells him that there are many more people now though, and you have new opportunities to start over again. I really felt bad for Balloon here, but this scene really gives you a new perspective on things in the series though. He's genuinely trying his best, and I really think that this flashback is the best part of the episode. The other thing I want to touch on here is the introduction / reintroduction to Taco. This is the first time we've seen her in years, and she offers to form a little alliance outside the game with Mike, who eventually goes through with it in the next episode. There isn't much to say about her because she doesn't really do anything else besides that, but I think this is just what Mike needed to help her story carry on this season. Everyone has something to do now in the season, and nobody's really bland anymore. This episode doesn't do anything revolutionary or out of this world, but it's there to give you a new way of looking at other characters and introducing new ideas, and to that, I say Rain on Your Trade does that wonderfully.
She's been gathering for ages. Paintbrush, light bulb, you gotta help her find them.
I don't even have a...
Look. Everyone, Nickel. Everyone died.
Gotta love how we went from one of the most depressing episodes in the entire show to a funny, goofy body swap episode. I actually don't remember liking the episode that much, but upon rewatching, it jumped in my ranks considerably. This is one of the best season 3 episodes. Firstly, the idea of a body swap isn't new at all, but I think it was done pretty well here with all the swaps making sense. I kind of forgot Nickel wasn't swapped though through the whole episode, so it's weird to see him just being kind of normal compared to everyone else. But the body swap makes for some pretty hilarious moments, specifically the Floor trying to figure out how to use limbs on Paintbrush, who, speaking of, is trying to figure out how to teleport. The last thing to note here is Bot. This is the episode where it's revealed where they came from, and it's quite an interesting story. Testy and Fan couldn't really accept Bo's death, so they built Bot, which was meant to be a perfect Bo replica. But what's interesting about this is that in Season 2's Try Your Best, you can see a device called the, quote, Boinator in Test Tube's lab. So this means that Bot could have existed for as far as even years before the 3rd season even started. Then again though, they could have just built Bot by any other means though. Who knows? Anyway, Bot gets angry at Test Tube for making them the way they are, but they resolve this quickly after, and Miphone doesn't even make them go back out into the challenge, which is honestly really sweet of him. I know Miphone isn't the best host, but I find him at his best when he shows a little humanity, like in this episode, despite the circumstances being so intense because of him and Ballpoint Pen. Oh yeah, Ballpoint Pen? He's fine, I guess. Doesn't really wow me, but he doesn't really make the episode worse or anything. This episode is still wonderful though. I think the body swap actually fits in really well, and the Bot reveal was worth almost a 1.5 year wait to the question of how Bo could even be alive. Any season 3 episode from here on out is peak.
Wonder if anyone even watched.
Good morrow, potential new viewers. The special television episode of I is about to begin.
Not interested.
He wouldn't let us invade his privacy.
I'm so sorry.
See, now this is how you do an invitational finale. Jury of Your Fears was fine, sure, but this is like 10 quadrillion times better than that episode. And Cabby is the best part, and it's not even close. I'm not even going to go too much into depth about her, but the dialogue she has with Test Tube and Springy are really well written, and it shows just on how much she's grown since the season actually started. Oh yeah, and she won the season this episode as well, so that definitely helps her case too. I get why people wanted Balloon to win so badly, and when this episode first came out, I kind of was hoping he would win instead of her, but now that I rewatched the whole season, yep, no, Cabby definitely deserved to win it way more than him. Plus Balloon kind of had his own happy ending anyway, because he's well liked again finally, and is closer than ever with Nickel. The Invitational Committee is a bit better, but doesn't get in the way too much, and I love the scenes at the volcano, especially with 4S appearing for the first time in 12 whole years, which is honestly crazy. This episode is a really fun time, and it'll definitely leave you with a smile on your face, because everything works out in the end, and everyone's happy with where they are. And for once, everything was peaceful amongst us II fans for a few months before we went back to Season 2, which... But anyway, with the finale out of the way, you might be thinking that we're done with Season 3, but you'd actually be wrong. As much as I love this entry in this season, there are 2 others that sneak up to the top of the list, which we'll get to very soon.
I'm gonna sue you.
I adore this episode. It's the perfect balance in between some goofy, inanimate, insanity fun, but there's also a subtle bit of seriousness hidden in here that hints at the fact that the show is changing and evolving slowly into something more. This episode starts the mood shift of the season, and I really think it eases you into it really well. Like, there's some great slapstick, like Cheesy being stupid, Fan not wanting to help due to some pattern, and the funny faces that Season 2 loves to do, but there's some really down-to-earth scenes that I always find myself coming back to the most when watching this one. Like when Miphone's in jail, Rusty Joe makes an incredibly good point about how he can't continue down this path of mistreating his contestants, or else there'll be big consequences later on. Or how about this scene, where Pickle's playing his games and Knife gives him advice about not letting his experiences with Taka ruin his social life, and that he has to be willing to try again and move on. He tries to play it off by saying how he was talking about the game, but he can't even hide that he is happy when he goes to leave Pickle. These 2 things are not only really good just character wise and giving others depth, but it might teach viewers themes or lessons that they might not know yet. And I know because this series has actually taught me a lot of advice that I apply to the real world every day to this day. Lastly, let's jump to Keep On Cleaning. This is the first song in the series and it's a banger. It's literally just about Soap singing about how she loves cleaning, but what's good about this song is that a lot of her and what other characters' lyrics have second meaning behind them that go way beyond just cleaning. Whenever she feels down, she cleans and it makes her feel better. And honestly, I like that mentality. Everyone should have a thing that they do when they're feeling sad. Like, I learned over the past few months that my way to combat my sadness is going outside or just leaving my house for a while, and it honestly makes me feel a lot more peaceful. But now I'm just going off topic. It's not even really about the plot, OJ hosting, or even the humor that makes me love this episode, though those definitely help it. It's more or less the incredible themes and messages it tries to convey to its viewers. While the other parts of this episode are great, the best part of alternate reality show is the part that's in the name, the alternate reality. Seeing such a different setting and play out of what could have been if things went a little differently is really cool to see. The alternate characters aren't the best when it comes to actual depth and story contribution, but they sure bring for a lot of funny moments in the episode. Salt and Pepper are nice additions too. We don't really know about them that much up until this episode in the series, but the whole alternate reality thing gives the two of them a lot more life and whatnot, even though the reality is just a different version from them. What about the other aspects though? Well, as I said, they're amazing as well. Test Tube doesn't really like Lightbulb all too much because she claims that she just causes problems and stumbles into solutions, but learns in the end that she actually recognizes said solutions instead of just getting lucky. Speaking of Lightbulb, this is one of her best episodes yet, most likely because it's a very bright light focused episode. I already just talked about her along with Test Tube, but also the dynamic between Lightbulb and Painty is really sweet this episode between the elimination and the scene that confirms that Paintbrush is non-binary. Everyone else doesn't get too much focus here, but that's alright because the last few episodes were very Grand Slam heavy, so this was definitely due. The only other thing I really want to touch on is Mike, Taco, and Knife. Firstly, I really enjoyed Mike and Taco this episode, but now that Knife is thrown into the mix, it really sets things up to come in the next few Season 2 episodes between him and Taco. Also, Knife is one of my favorites, so this is also probably just my personal bias talking, but this is an amazing episode regardless, and I can totally see why it's a fan favorite.
Salts, do you ever think that, like, we could rule the world if we wanted to? Yeah, but, like, why bother? Oh, hey.
Don't mention that again.
Top 10 time! After a little over 4 years of absence from Season 2, Truth or Flare is an awesome way to return after so long. And I love how this episode doesn't coddle or explain everything to you, it just throws you right into the season again, as if an entire season didn't just happen in between. Though to be fair, the Season 2 players don't actually know this yet. Still though, we get to the challenge and almost instantly it's actually really cool with the truth detecting platforms and whatnot. But Taco hosting it for the most part makes it way better. She exposes all the characters by forcing secrets and things out of them, like how Knife knew about her for a long time. It makes for some incredible drama and I found myself really never bored. The end result of all of this is Baseball and Lightbulb leaving, which is really surreal to see if anything. But Lightbulb's elimination is especially super wholesome because she just wanted to be with Paintbrush again due to missing them so much. Last but not least, Taco's tirade. Due to leaks and stuff, I already knew that Taco had a musical number this episode, but I never expected it for it to be this good. The animation is wonderful with clean transitions and visuals, though I think the part where she sings with Meatpad whilst in his screen is my favorite visually, and I don't even think I have to say anything about Reagan and Justin's performance here, especially with that high note at the end. I totally see why this is a fan favorite song, though there are a few more that I slightly favor over this one. As I said though, this is a perfect return to form after a whole season of something completely different. The challenge is really entertaining, we get to see all the characters we haven't seen for so long again, and Taco's tirade is near perfection.
What? Oh my gosh, I hate you! No, I really hate you! Why do you do this to me?
'Cause I'm a real scamp who lives for the drama. That's called cheating, moron.
I'm sure a lot of you are shocked at this placement or forgot about this episode since we're so close to finishing, but no, this one snuck its way to the top of my list. For good reason too. I do not remember this episode being that good, but upon my rewatch for this video, this jumped from like a solid high B tier to a low S. There isn't really one thing that particularly excels this episode, but it's more or less a few things. One of those things is the alliance plus Balloon. It was awesome to see Balloon finally stand up for himself after so long, especially to his biggest hater. And when Baseball feels bad about the whole incident, Nickel actually says some really nice words to him about how a good leader he is. This is also the first episode that Taco and Mike actually work together, and though it's not for too long, what's shown is a good introduction into what their dynamic together is going to be like. Lastly, this episode is shockingly hilarious and balances development and character interactions with sad humor. The bright lights, or mostly Fan and Lightbulb to be exact, are the main attraction for this episode's jokes, and they are on point here. My personal favorites are the cheating thing, the piano Lightbulb plays, the wheel Fan spins about Marshmallow, and also Fan being aware that the gain on Mike's back is more important than this episode than him.
I've been overshadowed by a knob, ladies and gentlemen. When's the focus gonna be me, huh?
I love how self-aware Fan is in this episode, so much on that topic. There isn't much more to say though. I think a lot of this placement is personal bias because I just really had fun when rewatching this, and I don't expect anyone to agree with the fact that this episode is slightly better than things like Truth or Flare or Alternate Reality Show, but this episode will always have a special place in my heart. Good job, Mason Confused.
It's gonna be a one-note conversation.
This is yet another completely random and out of nowhere placement, but I loved Best Served Cold. There's only one other season 3 entry I haven't ranked yet, but good lord does this one come close to it, and I mean it. Lots of people's tier lists have Best Served Cold ranked low, and I've never really understood that. It has the best challenge sequence in the entire season in my eyes, it's the funniest episode in the season, and the elimination's incredible. Let me dive into all 3 of these points. Making a mile-high ice cream is one of the most random and out-there challenges I've seen in the object show scene, but it works shockingly well. Everyone's doing their own thing. Yin and Yang are stacking ice cream, Silver is quote-unquote royally advising, as usual, and everyone has their own moments, sorta, if that makes sense. I feel like a broken record because I always talk about how funny these episodes are, but I mean it. It's mostly Silver though this episode. I'm not going to go into depth about him here, but oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite Silver Spoon features in the season. The elimination is the best part though. Kinda. See, what I mean that is the build up to Cabby getting out throughout the episode. It starts off with everyone not liking her due to the team swap idea, and when she tries to work with Test Tube, she tells in the confessionals about how she wishes they could agree on just one thing and that her methods could be different, and it all hits the peak at the elimination as Cabby starts to get votes instead of Silver, and everyone pulls out their files that she entrusted to Test Tube. The whole betrayal is just pulled off really well in my eyes, and is by far my favorite part in the episode. I can totally understand why you might not love this episode as much as I do, but since this came out, I've always loved Best Served Cold. It's one of my favorite episodes in Season 3, and it's one of my favorite episodes of all time in this show.
Thought you could use this, since you're, all sticky.
Oh, hello! Crazy what I'm doing right now, eh? You're probably wondering how...
Wow, I love that name. How did you come up with...
Just like Mason Confused, I do not remember this episode being this good. It's a bit less on the serious side because the mood shift had just started, but serious doesn't always mean good in Season 2, and this is a great example of such. Theft and Battery follows all the characters going to get a new battery for MePhone 4 because he's quite sick. This is also the first time we see MeCloud, where MePhone was made. This place looks cool too. You guys know me by now, I am so down for new settings. Oh yeah, and this is also where Steve Cobbs, the main villain of II, debuts. He seems nice to everyone now, but little do we know the things he has planned on later in the season. But Cobbs gives us a nice tour of the place with all his devices, inventions, and even wires. The other thing I want to talk about is Suitcase. In my opinion, this is her first major episode and she's written really well. Basically, Nickel and Baseball peer pressure her into stealing the battery they need for MePhone, and they also make her believe that she's trying to do the right thing until a computer called Macintosh tells her otherwise, and says that she's being used by her quote-unquote friends, which in a way sorta kicks off Suitcase going further and further from her alliance. For being the first time that the story is really focused on her, it's written amazingly. Last but not least though, my favorite part by far is the co-host this time around. Toilet is funny and is always funny every episode he's in, but we see a new side to him this time. He tries to sabotage the bright lights because he wants to give the battery to MePhone to be the good assistant, due to the fact that MePhone has never said one nice thing to him. But what ends up happening is a really sweet scene between the co-hosts on how MePad considers Toilet to be just as good as he is, just they serve different purposes. And for the rest of the season, the two become really close with each other, and all in all, I think a character like Toilet really needed this. The episode is wonderfully put together, and I think it's a super underrated entry in the series, because I do not see enough people talking about Theft and Battery. It's one of the first few episodes in the show to really focus on characters this time, and they're not afraid to show this, and as a whole, it fits into the mood shift perfectly.
Oh, look at here! Oh, it's a wire! Oh, look at here! Oh, it's a wire!
Coincidence? I think not!
And some worm milk! Yes! Exploding worm milk!
Yeah, I don't even think I need to explain why this episode places so high. The Overthinkers try something different from a typical episode, and what we get here is hands down the best of its respective season. I know that might be a really bold claim considering you have episodes like Out of Body Experience, Home is Where the Heart Is, and Spring on the Competition as Breakfast, It's spring on the competition as breakfast. No, this episode is genuinely so special to me. I even remember where I was when this episode first came out. I was 12 years old at the time, and me and my family were leaving to go home from a camping trip. I was super excited that day because I knew season 3 of II would return after a summer hiatus, and my expectations for this episode were exceeded greatly. I remember watching it for the first time in the car, and I was literally trying not to freak out over how good the episode I was watching. As I said though, the overthinkers try something different. We start the episode at the end of the competition, and the real main content of the episode is the thinkers discussing who to vote out of the elimination tonight, and all the little segments here have their own moments and great character interactions and discussion. Paintbrush is trying to be a good leader, while Silver is trying to sway some people to join his side because he knows who is immune. We also get our first introduction to the inner flame here from Kano, which is very cool too. Oh, and the elimination is peak. 4 words. Yin Yang does not count. If you know, you know. OJ was definitely the best option, but it was super cool to see him out of all people get eliminated because he's never been eliminated before. Like I said though, the interactions, characters featured here, elimination, it just all ties together to make a near perfect episode. And I'm confident many of you will agree with this placement. Totally worth that painful multi-month wait for us fans.
With Kendall gone, I thought of the perfect new alliance. He wants to make a boys club. Stay out of my brain journal.
I'm non-binary.
I mean, anti-girl club.
Oh, looky here! Oh, it's a wire!
While there are better episodes than this one, Season 2's Through No Choice of Your Own is by far the most saddening, depressing, heartbreaking, and emotional damaging episode in this entire show. And I love it. You know when you nail a 3-part movie down when my least favorite act is still one of my favorites in the show. At least there were some remnants of lightheartedness in late season 2 with certain moments and one-liners, but not this episode. I remember watching reactions to this episode when it first came out, and people were genuinely crying at moments such as Lightbulb being deleted and the end scene. Speaking of, if you're incredibly new to the II scene, many fans including me actually thought this is how the show was going to end. Everyone's deleted and Mifune has to go home with Cobbs. Nobody gets a happy ending. And while I actually would not have minded that, I was still totally distraught by even the thought of the series ending like this. I really can't emphasize on how much this episode emotionally damaged us fans. With that being said though, it's peak. All the plots within really speak to me. The characters all working together at Hotel OG is nice to see as they put the game aside no matter what history they had. Suitcase and Knife are wonderful too, and as much as I love Knife, I can't help but like Suitcase more here due to the really cool hallucination scenes and just the raw emotion she shows. Toilet returns and is good as always, and provides the tiniest bit of funny moments that this episode has. But I think we all know what part is the best. I already talked about the ending, but it's just so amazing. Suitcase and Knife making the fight fake and sacrificing themselves to save the Prime Shimmer, only for it to end with Mifune's haunting past catching up with him is, like I said, heartbreaking, but an incredible way to leave viewers off. I mean it when I say we were all fiending for the new episode. I don't really have much more to say though. The episode is near perfection, and if you watched it, then you understand how incredible episode 17 is.
You made this? Good job! It looks old, but works like new.
What a charming combination! Stop rhyming! And you are not my brother!
3 words. The Grand Slams. Oh my gosh, the drama and betrayal that happens in this team and in the episode as a whole is just unmatched here. I'm mostly going to be talking about said team, by the way, because it's what makes it so good. Everyone on the Grand Slams is important. Suitcase's dilemma on whether to stick with her alliance, Balloon trying to prove himself, Nickel being mean to Balloon but just wants the best for himself and others, Baseball just trying to do the right thing and keeping his team under control, the first time we really see Mike really work with Taco in length, and Knife stepping in at the end to help Suitcase out. I can't even describe to you how amazing the Slams drama and conflicts are in the episode, and we aren't even done with the team yet. The elimination this episode is one of the best eliminations in any object show ever. I remember it being good, but it really hit and occurred to me this time what they were trying to tell viewers here upon rewatching. Suitcase's one vote changed the course of the season, and Balloon got to go out on his own terms by voting for himself and trying to do Suitcase a favor. And we're not even done yet, because Marshmallow and Bo decide to drop the banger that is Afterlife in the Limelight out of nowhere in this episode. It's a really awesome song about 2 former players' views on the games. Bo thinks that the show was fun and feels incomplete because she's no longer on it, but Marshmallow sees it the complete opposite way because she thinks it could ruin you and your bonds with the people you meet. The instruments sound beautiful here, and I even think I need to explain Marshmallow's vocal performance here. There are a few more songs I like though, shockingly. Not trying to gas this episode up, but I really mean it when I say it's flawless. I legitimately have nothing to complain about here. The Grand Slam story is so amazingly written here, and while Suke's leaving her alliance can be traced back to as early as episode 8, it's still such a good peek for her and the other alliance members' storyline. Pair that up with an amazing song and you have one of the best season 2 episodes out there. From now on, it's just simply a battle of preference.
Spontaneous electrocution? I never even considered that. Too many variables.
Would you just throw the ball? Oh, it gets good. Just skip season 1.
I really cannot even begin to express the amount of revolutionary things the final episode of the series does. First off, Karma Waits is a song that I really didn't expect at all when I first heard it, but I was pleasantly shocked when hearing it for the first time. You can tell Anthony is putting his heart into it while singing it. This is also the first time that we really see Mifune and Cobbs interact that isn't a flashback, and it's actually really interesting. I like how Mifune's more scared than he ever should be, but he still knows to never give in to Cobbs, so instead of obeying him, he throws funny snarky remarks and lets the Prime Shimmers get away. Not my favorite part of the episode, but the dialogue and interactions between the two are super cool. Crazy to think we barely even scratched the surface yet. Box is revealed to be actually alive and she's grown on me super quickly. I enjoy her personality and just the fact that she's sort of a prototype suitcase is super cool to me. Everyone coming back is awesome too. We see amazing interactions between characters that we thought were dead forever, and of course, the fan service for the shippers. Still blows my mind to this day, by the way. Despite all the things in this episode like Box, ships being confirmed, and seeing all the characters again, Meathpad sacrificing himself for the characters, and Cobbs being a really amazing villain, I think my favorite part has got to be the race inside of Mifune. This part of the episode is so special to me. So special, I'm just gonna be blunt with you guys watching here. This is my favorite scene in the entire show. This is because it shows everyone really working together to try and move forward, and the flashbacks that try to mess with the characters only for them to be comforted by someone else who cares is really special to me. I can't explain why, but I just find this amazing. But going back to my last point, I love seeing characters with previous beef helping each other out, like Mike and Test Tube, Soap and Tissues, and Knife and Marshmallow. Heavy on that last one, by the way. 4S was right. He tortured and killed Marsh for so long and then he died for her. It's very poetic, I must say. Overall, that whole scene just means a lot to me because of the points I made, and it really shows all the characters reflecting on past experiences, which I enjoy a ton. Cobb's Popcorn, very good. Eye is an amazing song, and all the little references in it are a really cool throwback and fits the song greatly. Knife is a Ghost, a really well animated end credit scene. I mean, you get my point. The finale of season 2 is quite literally packed to the brim with content and has someone for everyone. The line scene is what really brings this up, but there are plenty more things I could praise from this episode. I just don't want this section to get too long. I apologize that the last few entries have been the same old, oh this is peak, oh this is awesome, but I really have no other words to say. The top of the list has episodes that are just that good, and to think that this isn't even my favorite.
Very carefully. Anger's not... Don't do that again.
Angry? Thrangry!
Oh, I'm not Thrangry. I'm furious!
I'm gonna be real here. In my time in the II community, I never got the hype around hatching the plan. Sure, I thought it was good, but I never understood why everyone gassed it up so much. I favored most other season 2 episodes over it, but after rewatching the series, I totally understand why this is the most universally loved episode. It doesn't even give you any warning, it just throws you into it. Probably because it takes place presumably a few hours into the night after the previous episode, Mind Your Own Business. Love that connection though, because it really builds the world. But anyway, it throws you into it in a very good way. Fan gets taken by the Shimmers, and as a result, we see a side of Test Tube that we've never seen before, and not just her, but in really any character in the show. She gets so angry about this, she channels it into proactivity, into building her rocket. It really goes to show how much she cares about her friends. Oh yeah, and Fan's egg finally snatches into a baby Shimmer. And to think all this happened because some silly prank cherries tried to pull an apple taking that egg all the way back then. But anyway, the ship is an amazing setting visually, and the purple fits in really well. The Shimmers explain the backstory and basically drop a bunch of lore, which is really interesting and well animated too. But let's jump to some other points. I love Mike this episode. She tells Taco explicitly to not use violence whatsoever when grabbing Fan from the ship, only for Taco to straight up break her trust by killing Test Tube and hurting Fan very badly, despite her insisting that she won't. And that shot with her and Taco in the white background and turning down her gain for the final time while she talks about how gaining nothing, peak play on words and gives me chills every time. Her quitting was sad to see, but it was definitely the best story-wise. Now that she's left Taco, her story is kinda complete, and her finally being able to make her own choices again was amazing to see. The whole elimination was done so well too. After all the effort Test Tube put in today, only for her to get eliminated is just another one that saddened me, but it was the most logical. I couldn't really see her fitting into a Final Four scenario. Plus she reunited with fans, so that's good. Everyone has something going on for them though. I don't want to break down what every character is doing, but nobody's irrelevant here and I mean it. I'm not trying to keep repeating the same thing over and over, but this episode is 30 minutes of pure perfection. Every scene matters, and I see why this took over a year to release. You can really tell passion and care went into this. The shimmers are awesome, I love Fan getting a role despite being eliminated, Taco and Mike are amazing here, and the overall vibe of the episode is just more serious because the situation is more than the game, but it's presented really well and it isn't all up in your face too much. Also, the music here is amazing. Please listen to it. While number 1 isn't as loved by the fans as other episodes on this list, and it's not even that long of an episode, I think is the absolute pinnacle of what this show has to offer to fans, and I think number 1 does a 10 out of 10 job in every sector in making a piece of media in my opinion. With that being said, the reality of the situation is an episode that I'm sure many of you expected to be this high up, but the number 1 spot? Seriously though, while it was close between the top few, I think episode 16 of season 2 is a little better than the other top few. But this episode is perfect in my opinion for so many reasons. Like, we get to see many characters that we haven't seen in a long time show up again and interact with Suitcase and Knife. I especially love the reunion between Balloon and Suitcase, and her finding out about a whole season is just very surreal, and I loved her reaction to the whole thing. Everything starts to fall apart after a few minutes when a few characters like Pickle and OJ get deleted, and it's like genuinely horrifying. At any moment your favorite could be deleted too, and at this point it's assumed by me and other fans that they're dead forever, so it hits extra hard. The Future Is Yesterday is goated, by the way. It's the best song in the series for me. I love the instrumentals, and Cobbs has an amazing singing voice. Also, the pause in the middle of the song when Cobbs goes to answer questions has such a cool transition, and the animation is so good, and oh my god, I just love this song so much. Also, I love Cobbs in general this episode. Like, he's actually one of my favorite characters in the show because he's such an amazing written villain. Anytime he's on screen, I just want to punch him and kill him, but that's why I love him so much. Well-written characters are characters that are meant to be hated, and the show does it so well. His voice actor does an amazing job at voicing him too, and I absolutely love his demeanor and style in the show. Again, I hate him as a person, but as a character, he's one of the best antagonists I've ever seen. This is really enforced by the last scene in the episode too. If the lion scene from the finale didn't happen, this would be my favorite scene in the entire show. I love his monologue on why he's deleting characters, and how much of a child Mifune is, and how Mifune's on the phone with him towards the end. And of course, what wouldn't this scene be without the iconic line?
See, Mifune didn't just make the show, he made you.
This scene legitimately captured me and gave me goosebumps all the way through when I watched this episode. The twist of Mifune making the characters and everything we've seen in the show after all these years being fake just made everyone in the community freak out, including me. I mean, the show we've watched for years, it's been fake this whole time. And there have been subtle hints along the way, don't get me wrong, such as Cabby not remembering her parents, Springy and Fan glitching out, and Mifune favoring Bot because they were the only one that Mifune didn't make, but it still shocked so many people. It makes all the more sense now, and this whole twist is just insane. It gives the whole show a new meaning. This is why it's my favorite episode in the show. The beginning scenes are so cool and the song is amazing, but it's the twist at the end and Cobbs that really does it for me. I'm not joking when I say that this episode is revolutionary in the OSC. It never fails to hook me every time I rewatch it, and the drama is so well done. I know a lot of you guys might favor other episodes over this one, but the reality of the situation will always hold a very special place in my heart. It's one of the best episodes I've seen of any show, period. That was a lot, but I'm super glad to give you guys my opinion. This show has quite literally helped me shape into the person I am today, and I really have no clue where I would be without it. It's not my favorite in the OSC, but oh my gosh, it is so special to me. I haven't really talked about II too much here on this channel, but I love it just as much as BFDI, and watched the two shows practically in tandem almost every day when I first joined the community 4 years ago as of this month. But I really had fun making this video. It was a super fun experience rewatching the entire series and really giving each episode one by one its own few minutes to showcase. There were also so many more things I want to talk about and give my own opinion on, but I just couldn't due to not wanting this video to be too long. So if I never talked about something that you wanted me to give my thoughts on, drop it in the comments and I'll most likely reply. Before I end this off, you would not believe how hard I worked on this video. Writing took weeks and hours a day with almost 20,000 words in the script, and I worked very hard on editing this video. I've never done this before, and I'm only going to say things like this once in a blue moon, but if you enjoyed this video, a like or sub would be appreciated for all my hard work. But if you don't want to though, it's all good, no pressure at all. But with that being said, feel free to tell me what you guys thought of my biggest and longest ranking video ever. Did you agree or disagree? Let me know and I'll totally discuss with you in the comments. I'm probably not going to upload for a while just to give myself a break, but I'll definitely be doing loads of streams in the future, so feel free to drop by if you happen to catch one. I don't really know how to end this one, so here, quick, just put up a really bad credit scene. See you guys soon, bye!
Hi. Shoot, what do I say here? Hi, I'm Pigeon. I made the thumbnail. Sub to Marley. And me, I guess. Okay, thanks for watching, bye.